I was walking down my block and now the cops are stopping me. I said, what you doing here? Like, why you trying to talk to me? I said, officer, what am I doing wrong? Let me get just what I came for, I really won't be long. When I told him I had children, he was looking at me differently. Doing what I'm doing, why he gotta clench his fist at me. I came about the dirt, but they still mad cause of my history. I'ma keep on going to the top until they sick of me. Steady protest, but I don't even see a change. Always hearing BLM, but is it really in your brain? Gotta see what's going on, cause we ain't all treated the same. Why so serious? I'm furious, cause this is not no game.
And I want to welcome you back to New Brunswickers Want Action, NBWA. I want to introduce you first to my co-hosts, Mr. Matthew Martin and Dr. Timothy Christie. Now, as in every show, there's always an outcome. This show is about the end of systemic discrimination and racial discrimination. There's no secret there. This is what we've been discussing as an umbrella topic since the show started. However, today's outcomes that we want to discuss and that we're hoping for is the issue of transparency. Transparency in government, transparency through all administrations, but today specifically we're going to talk about transparency in policing. It's our ideal that through cooperation and stakeholder engagement, policing can have more legitimacy. Police have been given the authority to enforce the laws. And it's our opinion that an appropriate outcome would be that those same police would engage the stakeholders of the community with which they police, in which they police, to ensure that everybody's on the same page. Because if you're going to be policing, we need community engagement and some transparency. So today we've got a very special guest, and I'm very, very excited. Your Worship, Mr. Don Darling of the city of the Mayor of the City of St. John. And Mr. Mayor, I want to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Your Worship, I've got a very specific question for you. Recently you wrote, or you were going to make a submission to the St. John Police Commission related to transparency. Now, before we get specific about that, why would you do it? Why was it so important to you?
Well, first of all, you know, in a way I'm disappointed to have to do it, to write a motion that is has a stern tone, that is demanding and for the commission to direct the police chief to release a series of policies, to be open and transparent, to lead with that mindset. You know, I'd rather that it just be the culture, that it just happen, that we demonstrate in all aspects of city operations that leadership. But in the absence of that, then the only tool I have in my tool belt as a mayor or a member of the commission is to bring forward a motion and to ask the other commission members to endorse that motion, and that's what we'll see debated, if you will, this coming Wednesday night.
Okay, so I appreciate the process, but why was it so important to you, the topic of this motion? Why?
Yeah.
What drove you there?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Well, from a perspective of how the city operates or how we operate as a society, we shouldn't fight and need to fight for openness and transparency. I think that's important. I think, you know, my eyes have really been, I'm in my 5th year as mayor. I think I'll be the only 5-year mayor in the history of the city. And I've learned an awful lot. I've been, it's the most rewarding work I've ever done, guys. It's been the most difficult work I've ever done. And I really have a tremendous disdain for politics and the lack of leadership that's demonstrated. And, you know, in a way, if I allowed the role and what I've learned in the last 4.5 going into my 5th year, I could become really skeptical. I could become really angry about what I see. And I think this motion for me represents an energy, a little bit of anger that you should have to fight to have an organization be open, be transparent, engage with the community. That should be a given. We shouldn't have to debate that.
We agree with you completely.
Yeah, you know, and it's you know, Dr. Christie gave a phenomenal interview on CBC this week, and And I agree totally with you, Tim, that it's an opportunity for little New Brunswick, for little St. John in the big scheme of things, Canada's first incorporated city, to show a level of leadership on these files. And why do they matter? We're talking about a community where folks are treated equally. They're not today. Where folks are not judged by their skin color or their culture, and they're not today. And so I owe a debt of gratitude even in the last short few months, even since we gathered together in King Square. Even the first time I knew, I think, of Matthew, but I didn't really know Matthew. Matthew called me up and we had a bit of a chat. And I said, well, great to rally, but what are we going to do? What are we going to do the next day? And so I feel really grateful in one breath that my mind has been opened up in a different way about my privilege that probably I wasn't very connected to. And in the next breath, I'm frustrated by maybe even some of my own behaviors. I'm frustrated by the pace and just how important this conversation is to affect change, which is the whole thrust of your show here.
Mm-hmm. So if I can just jump in, I love your comments. So we have to thank you, and we have to thank you tremendously for being here. This is a wonderful opportunity for all of us. And in my line of work, one of the things I do when I'm working in a clinical setting or something is try to figure out some of the things people disagree about. Mm-hmm. And in ethics, there's two things you can disagree about. You could disagree over facts, or you could disagree over values. And so the technical term is called a fundamental disagreement. So we agree on the facts, but we disagree about what to do. For instance, we might agree this person's pregnant, but we disagree about whether she should be able to get an abortion or not because we value the status of the fetus differently. Mm-hmm. Other disagreements are over facts. So we just don't agree on the facts, and therefore we can't figure out what to do. In the topic of systemic discrimination and systemic racism, and like I said, there's slightly different concepts, right? So systemic discrimination could be where the system discriminates against any number of people for any number of reasons. So it could be socioeconomic status, whatever. But when the police stop blacks in Halifax on the street 6 times more than Caucasians, that's racism. Mm-hmm. And our systems have both. But one of the frustrations that all of us have is we can't seem to get agreement on the facts. When we have chiefs of police, we have premiers throughout the country say systemic discrimination and systemic racism just doesn't exist. And if we can't get agreement on those facts, it's really difficult to figure out what to do. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I was thinking is, if I was, say, a police chief, I would say to myself, okay, say systemic discrimination and systemic racism exist. What can I do to be proactive and make sure it's not influencing my police force? Mm-hmm. And the example, the precedent would be like conflict of interest literature. Sometimes the appearance of a conflict of interest is just as bad as an actual conflict. The appearance of systemic racism and systemic discrimination can be just as bad as the actual. So I guess my question, or the thing that I would like to get your thoughts on, is how come it's so difficult to put our thumb on the systemic racism thing in our institutions, or say in our police force? Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, before I try to share some thoughts on your specific question, I mean, I think, and likely happening at all levels of government, the political piece that has been so frustrating to me is, when I look around at the challenges that the city of St. John faces, and then we'll get into governance and chat about that for a second here, but when I look at it, there's really no excuse. And I get myself in trouble because I'm passionate, and the cousin of passion, at least for me, is emotion. So, I'm not scripted, I speak from the heart, I fight for what I believe in, I live my values. And I've been very frustrated that the city of St. John is in this position that it's in. No growth outcomes, which impacts people's lives previously. No financial plans. Using the credit card and the line of credit when we should have been just making tough decisions. The reforms that we need with the provincial government. And one of the ways I summarize that is, as an elected official or as a leader, if you want to keep your job more than doing what's right, And if we have to debate, the doing what's right, we've got a problem in the first place. So everybody agrees with openness and transparency until you actually have to be held accountable to be open and transparent. So and again, I'm here as the mayor. I'm a member of the police commission. I mean, the governance documents say I don't speak for the police commission. That's true. I always distinguish between, as the mayor, I'm offering up my opinion. But I mean, I think that is a question that the chief has to answer. It is a question that the city manager has to answer, and all of us as elected officials have to be held accountable for. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. So, we're saying, we want to be open and transparent, but we won't release the most fundamental policies. And what's gone with that, it's not the tactic of releasing the policy that I necessarily wanted. It's actually engaging with the community in draft form to release these policies. Of course, these policies are going to be, available on our website, because we're here to serve and protect and to be held accountable in the case of police or in anything else that we do. But your question, Tim, around, I guess I'm just sort of formulating my answer, but, if you're not being impacted by it, right? If you're not being impacted by it on a day-to-day basis, do you have the character, the empathy, the leadership capacity to actually work with those that are being impacted and care just as passionately about it? So my vision of as a mayor, but in May I won't be the mayor anymore. Nothing is going to change for me. I want equality in our community. I want cultural diversity in our community. I don't want anyone to be discriminated against, held back, attacked for any reason, culture, race, sexual, so I think as a community, one of the things that I've been most discouraged about in my time as a civic leader is how many citizens squander their leadership responsibility to be part of the solution. So I guess what I'm trying to say is perhaps, we lack empathy. Perhaps if it's not happening to me, I'm saying, you know what? When we have, as I shared with you guys today, when you have a story on the CBC of the province of Quebec, not just Quebec, Alberta and Saskatchewan as well, not attending a discussion with the federal minister who wanted to have a discussion about systemic racism, that needs to not be okay.
Agreed.
So it's a multifaceted approach it's going to take to end systemic racism, but it starts with me. This discussion, and I'm all over the place, sorry, but this discussion in the States, right now with what's going on, I don't care whether people are Republican or Democrat. I have my own political views. That was really a conversation about honesty and decency and integrity and leadership, and that applies in little old St. John, New Brunswick. This is a conversation about having a society where anyone, regardless of their skin color, their culture, their age, can walk around in our community and feel a part of the community and feel safe.
Yeah, I think when we bring it back to transparency, like Tim said, we need to take a look at why is it so hard. We look at our police force and they're continuing saying we're getting these body cameras because we want to increase the transparency within our police force. But in reality of things, those governance documents that are going to say this is how they're going to be used, this is how when they'll be turned off and on, those have still yet to be put out into the public eye. And at this point, we are sitting days away, possibly, from them being rolled out without our public knowing how is it actually going to benefit anything. When we take a look at the transparency issue of it is not only do I have an issue with we're going to roll these out without having those documents made public, which if an officer has an altercation on that day of the release of the cameras, turns it off, myself as a citizen goes, where do I stand now with this situation? We don't know the repercussions for such issue. We don't know how these cameras are going to be used, when they're going to be turned on, when can they be turned off. So the transparency of this item that is supposed to increase that transparency is a really, where does it stand at the end of the day?
Let's transition into those discussions.
And with your point, Matthew, something like a body cam, if you say, why do we want the police to wear a body cam in the first place? The answer is because we're concerned about elements of their interaction with people on the street. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those interactions could be good, sometimes they might be bad, sometimes they end up with people being shot and killed. And we know historically, in other jurisdictions that have used them, there is a little bit of a prejudice with body cams in terms of racism and discrimination. So once again, for our police force to know the history of body cams, the implication of body cams for systemic discrimination and systemic racism, and to still not want to share a policy on the thing, we have to say, you are simply trying to be counterproductive in a discussion about systemic racism as opposed to proactive. If I was the chief once again, and I knew something as controversial as this is coming, I'd be engaged in stakeholder consultation, I would be talking to people, I'd be publishing drafts of the policy, I'd be soliciting feedback, and that only makes it better.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, first of all, one of the themes overall that I've been most surprised at, and it's a huge issue, not just in the city of St. John, in the province, everywhere, it's governance issues, right? You know, just the challenges, T-crossing, I-dotting, have the business plans complete, having that culture ingrained. So, you know, we're talking about policing. I'm not an expert on policing. It's not my role to be an expert on operations of policing. My role is to be, you know, there to play a governance role, to represent the community. I was elected by the people of St. John to represent them. And every day I talk about, with our leadership, our management and others, the shareholders of the organization is the community. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think we have to get to, one of the places, we have to get to, is that we would never even contemplate implementing, we're talking body cams, we're talking any other kind of, you know, operational change, that we wouldn't even contemplate implementing such an item without first engaging with the community. That's what I think we have to strive, that your actions and your words match, number one. And number two, that, you know, what I've learned, again, and sort of shame on me, the body cam discussion was sort of dropped on us one day at a meeting. And guess what? You know, what I've learned just in preparing with for the motion, you know, you go online and you start, well, guess what? The evidence is not clear on body cams, on whether are they good or are they bad? Well, and how it is the responsibility of us as leaders, and in particular, we're talking about encouraging the chief of police, is to maintain and build and know where you are with that public trust. Exactly. And the policy is vital, and that's why I wrote into my motion that the body cam rollout must be delayed until, and my position has not changed, I'll be very firm about that at the next meeting. We cannot implement body cams until the policy has been vetted in the community. And again, we're not going to agree necessarily on every line, but I think there was enough really well-written recommendations included as background in the motion to say, look, these are the types of inclusions that should be there in a body cam policy.
So if I might, in my 20 years almost of health and safety experience, writing policies, practices, and procedures, one of the primary characteristics of that is, even if I'm writing a policy on an electric screwdriver, is that I go and have that talk with the operator of the electric screwdriver, that stakeholder engagement. Otherwise, I'm just giving the guy that runs the electric screwdriver instructions how to use his screwdriver, and I might have written them wrong. So that stakeholder engagement in a simplistic example is required. So, and it gave me in that career legitimacy, because the people I worked with understood I wasn't sitting on a Pearl Palace writing documents and making them eat them, right? So that creation of that trust within the public, especially in policing, would be a primary characteristic, I think, for any police force or any governing body in the country. So my question to you, Mr. Mayor, and you may not be able to answer it, you know, why is St. John in a situation where not just the police, but the city itself in certain departments, why is the stakeholder engagement so low? What's the problem here, especially being that it's part of the policy? Sorry, it's part of the mandate of the city, the stakeholder engagement, and the police work for the city.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, lots of governance challenges there. You know, I think I've got two answers, I think. First of all, I was reflecting on this the other day, and we should be very, very concerned about this as a society. Apathy is a huge problem. And I've really been shocked, frankly, by it, over the last number of months. But let me give you 2 examples. I shared, it's an open motion, I shared my motion with a bit of preamble on Facebook the other night. I wanted the public to know, and I wanted to say, hey, read this, and if you have any feedback before the meeting, let me know. Let me know, right? I'm just going from memory quickly. It got 33 interactions, no comments, and I think it did get shared 8 times. Now let me compare that. I wrote from the heart. I believe in being vulnerable and authentic. I wrote a little story, and I showed a little picture of my golden retriever named Gus when he was a baby. I picked him up on Saturday. Sunday we went on a road trip. That got, I think, 997 interactions, and it got 80 comments or 100 comments, and it got 33 shares. Let's,
Well, the discussion is clearly more distinct and difficult.
But I think what it says is, it's complicated. I don't know what to do. I'm going to say nothing. It's controversial. I don't know what to do, so I'm going to say nothing. I want to keep my job, so I'm going to say nothing. I want to keep my job as an elected official, so I'm going to say nothing.
Well, that's why you only see 3 of us around this region, because that's typically the opinion of most Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. If I open my mouth, I'm going to get in something, whether be it trouble or public. They don't want to be in the public eye, I suppose, but it's similar.
But it's so, and it's true, and it's
true.
sad, and it's disgusting, and we should be really upset about it, that we can't say what we need to say without repercussions and so on. Like, the bigger discussion for me is really about reforming, right? Reforming the police, changing the way we're doing business. I think we have a very good police force. I think we have a lot of police officers who care. I think so. It's about changing the way we do business. And I suppose what we're seeing here is not just with police, but overall, is the world trying to come to grips with the massive amount of change that's needed in our society.
Well, I want to start, closing down by saying, in New Brunswick we have opportunities that other people don't.
Huge ones.
I remember one time I was giving a talk on methadone treatment in New York City. And the person in charge of methadone for New York City said to me, Dr. Christie, how many people do you have to get on methadone in New Brunswick to get a handle on your problem? And I said, if we get 3,000 to 5,000, we will be doing really well. She said, I need 300,000. The magnitude of our problems here in New Brunswick are finite. They are solvable. We can fix them. Our police force, our city councils, our municipalities, or even our provincial government have the opportunity to do something. And what I want to say to the people in charge of these institutions is it's unforgivable for you not to do it, not to take this opportunity, not to change the way we do business, and business as usual is no longer acceptable.
Absolutely, Your Worship. We're about to close up here, but I want to thank you for coming on the show today. Your opinion was absolutely fabulous, and your input has been absolutely gracious. Matthew, do you have any other questions for the mayor, or any comments in the last closing minutes of the show?
I think for my final comments would be, I think all these leaders need to put their feelings and their egos aside, and just say, you know what, acknowledge this problem, acknowledge that we need transparency, accept that we may have produced a policy that is crap. But at the end of the day, let's get our community's input, let's grow that, let's move that forward, because through that we can proactively move forward in dismantling systemic racism, systemic discrimination, and we can truly have a force that is trusted by our community. If we don't start breaking these walls down and accept the fact that feelings are going to get hurt while we're doing it, we're never going to move forward. I think we need to just accept the fear, the tears, everything that may come with it, move forward, because at the end of the day, we're going to heal, we're going to grow, and we're going to be a better community from it.
That's right. And we're all on the same side, right?
Absolutely.
These are our policemen and women as well, our police force.
Our friends.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's opportunity for us to figure out what the barriers are, break them down, and start working. But once again, we have to accept the common set of facts. And part of the facts in contemporary discussion is systemic racism is real. So let's be proactive about addressing it. Let's stop this foolish discussion about whether it exists or not.
I think if we're just, I know we're out of time here, but I think for me, it's systemic racism is real. We're all contributing to it, whether we know it or not. We're all contributing to it. And a fundamental first step is openness, transparency, accountability, and engaging with the community. That's just a step. So if we're having a struggle there, if we're spending so much time just there, we got a long journey to go, right? So let's start there. Let's lead. Let's be leaders. Let's be proactive, and that allows us some time to free up to get to the next stage.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I do thank you again. And in closing, this whole discussion today, our show is about systemic discrimination and racial discrimination and the ending of those two terrible things. What we have here, as Dr. Christie said, is an incredible opportunity, not just the St. John Police Force, but every police force across the province, all of the government departments. This is an opportunity, as Dr. Christie said, which is finite and can be done to provide transparency, stakeholder engagement, which will lead to legitimacy. I believe those are some fairly important characteristics of our community and our society, so that we all feel not only specific to policing safe, but we feel like we've had a part in the authorities' work, those folks who are protecting us. If you feel the same and you want to have a discussion about this, send us an email at nbwa@chco.tv. Ask your questions. We'd love to have it. I think it's going to be written down here anyways if I said that wrong. We want to thank you for listening in today. Matthew Martin, thank you very much today for helping me co-host. Dr. Christie, well said. And your worship, we got to stay safely distanced, but I want to thank you very much for coming on the show today. Your comments and your input's extremely important, and we appreciate having allies in high places. So again, thank you all for showing up today. Make it a great day and choose to win. Oh wait, don't forget, Neil Clements, 2021 St. John municipal election. I'm running for councillor at large, and I'd appreciate your support. Make it a great day and choose to win.